Hello guys, welcome to Fictional Vortex. So in this video, we will see what if Naruto was the Sorcerer Supreme and wielded the Time Stone. Naruto x Scarlet which x Black Widow, Marvel. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1. The Maelstrom Sorcerer. Golden sparks erupted in the midnight air above Manhattan as a circular portal tore open the fabric of reality. Naruto Uzumaki stepped through, his orange and black cloak billowing around him, the mystical fabric embroidered with ancient seals that glimmered in the darkness. The Time Stone pulsed rhythmically against his forehead, embedded in a modified headband where the symbol of the hidden leaf had once been. "You're late," Wong said, his arms crossed as he stood on the precipice of the Sanctum Sanctorum's roof. "Sorry," Naruto replied, landing lightly beside his friend. Dimensional disturbance in Tokyo needed personal attention. He rolled his shoulders, the tension of the previous battle still lingering in his muscles. "What's the situation?" Wong's stoic expression tightened. "Readings similar to the Norway incident. Multiple breach points forming a geometric pattern across the city." Naruto closed his eyes, extending his awareness outward. 6 years in this dimension had honed his sensory abilities beyond what he'd thought possible. The familiar warmth of chakra now intermingled with the distinct vibrations of this universe's mystic energies, creating a sensory landscape he navigated with instinctive precision. There. His eyes snapped open, now rimmed with orange, Sage Mode activating. Financial District. Bryant Park. Upper East Side. And. He frowned, detecting something different. Something bigger forming over Central Park. Whatever's causing these rifts is evolving its approach. "The Avengers are responding to the smaller breaches," Wong reported, consulting a glowing mandala of information hovering before him. "Stark specifically requested you handle Central Park." His exact words were, "Let me guess," Naruto interrupted with a wry smile. Something about not wanting interdimensional tourists in his backyard without proper magical supervision. More colorful language, but essentially correct. Naruto formed a familiar cross-shaped hand seal. Shadow Clone Jutsu. 4 perfect duplicates materialized in puffs of smoke, each adjusting the ornate sling rings on their fingers. "2 of you assist with evac at the financial district," he commanded. 2 to Bryant Park, focus on containment, not just fighting whatever comes through. The clones nodded sharply, understanding the nuances of their creator's instructions without further explanation. 4 golden portals opened simultaneously, each clone stepping through to their assigned location. Wong watched with the same mild disapproval he'd maintained since Naruto had first demonstrated the technique at Kamartage. The Ancient One would have appreciated the efficiency, Naruto noted, reading his friend's expression. Wong's lips quirked slightly. "The Ancient One would have lectured you for hours about dividing your consciousness across multiple planes simultaneously." "Probably," Naruto acknowledged with a chuckle. "But then she'd have asked me to teach her the technique anyway." He extended his hand. "Coming with me?" Wong clasped his forearm in the warrior's grip they'd developed. "The sanctum needs protection during multiple incursions. But I've alerted our third." The familiar crackle of energy announced another portal opening behind them. Naruto turned, a genuine smile spreading across his face as Wanda Maximoff stepped through, crimson energy dancing at her fingertips. "Started without me?" she asked, her Sokovian accent more pronounced in moments of tension. Unlike her usual combat attire, she wore a modified sorcerer's garb, deep scarlet robes with patterns Naruto had designed to help channel her chaos magic. "Just the opposite," Naruto replied. "Perfect timing as always." Her eyes, glinting with power, met his. "Central Park? How'd you know?" The corner of her mouth lifted. "Because that's where I'd go if I were causing trouble. Maximum visibility, minimum escape routes for civilians, and symbolic impact." She stepped closer, the air between them almost humming with combined energies. "Besides," Stark called. He's particularly worried about whatever's opening these doorways. Naruto's hands moved through a complex series of gestures, mystic arts blending seamlessly with the hand signs of his homeworld. Let's not keep our visitor waiting then. The portal he opened shimmered differently than standard sling ring apertures, tinged with blue chakra that spiraled at its edges. Wong had once commented that Naruto's portals felt alive compared to conventional ones. He wasn't wrong. Wanda moved alongside him, their shoulders nearly touching as they stepped through together into the cool night air of Central Park. The disturbance was immediately apparent, a churning vortex of purplish energy 50 feet above Sheep Meadow, expanding in diameter with each passing second. The air smelled wrong, like ozone and something else Naruto recognized from previous incursions, the distinct scent of another dimension bleeding through. Perimeter? Wanda asked, already scanning for civilians. NYPD's cleared a half-mile radius, came a voice from above as Iron Man descended, repulsors glowing. But whatever that is, it's growing faster than the others. Stark's faceplate retracted, revealing an expression of calculated concern. Your specialty, Whiskers. Naruto had long since stopped bristling at the nickname. Any readings? Nothing consistent with previous incursions, Tony replied, holographic data streaming around his armored form. Energy signature has similarities to the Norway event, but there's a frequency modulation that's new. Naruto reached out with his senses, pushing past the superficial readings into the deeper currents of reality. The familiar sensation of Sage Mode enhanced his perception, natural energy flowing through his pathways and merging with the mystical awareness he developed under the Ancient One's tutelage. What he felt made his blood run cold. It's not random, he stated, eyes fixed on the growing anomaly. There's intent behind it, someone's pulling at the dimensional barriers deliberately. Pulling from which side? Wanda asked, her own senses, chaotic but powerfully intuitive, reaching toward the disturbance. Before Naruto could answer, the portal expanded explosively, doubling in size with a thunderclap that echoed across the park. Through the swirling vortex, something massive began to emerge. First came an enormous clawed hand, its scaled surface glistening wetly in the moonlight. Then a muscular arm the size of a city bus, followed by a shoulder that seemed to distort the very air around it. The creature pulled itself through the dimensional tear with deliberate, almost careful movements. That, Tony remarked with forced casualness, is definitely not in any of the bestiaries you loaned me. The beast's head emerged, reptilian but wrong, with too many eyes arranged in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Its massive jaws opened to reveal row upon row of crystalline teeth that seemed to reflect light from sources not present in this dimension. Interdimensional apex predator, Naruto assessed, orange energy beginning to swirl around his form. Likely drawn by the weakening barriers between realities. Drawn or sent? Wanda questioned, crimson shields already forming around her hands. The creature roared, a sound that existed simultaneously as a deafening bass rumble and a high-pitched keening that made nearby glass crack. It pulled the remainder of its enormous body through the portal, revealing a serpentine lower half that twisted in impossible geometries. Questions later, Tony declared, faceplate snapping shut as he rocketed upward. Containment now. Naruto's hands flashed through signs with practiced precision. Sage art, boundary establishment technique. He slammed his palm against the ground, sending a surge of nature energy infused with mystical force outward in a perfect circle. Glowing seals erupted across the grass, climbing invisible walls to form a massive dome encompassing the creature and the still open portal above it. The barrier wouldn't hold it for long, but it would prevent collateral damage and contain whatever else might follow through. Iron Man opened with a barrage of repulsor fire, targeting the creature's many eyes with surgical precision. The beast recoiled, more annoyed than injured, swinging a massive tail toward the armored Avenger. Tony barrel rolled to avoid it, the displaced air from the near miss sending him tumbling briefly before his stabilizers compensated. Wanda moved with fluid grace, her training with Naruto evident in how she positioned herself. Rather than launching a direct attack, she focused on the portal itself, her scarlet energy intertwining with the dimensional tear. "The frequency is wrong," she called out, strain evident in her voice. "I can't close it alone, it's being maintained from both sides." Naruto nodded sharply, understanding her meaning. This wasn't a natural incursion, something intelligent was orchestrating it. The creature lurched forward, its massive form surprisingly quick as it lunged toward Wanda. Naruto's response was instantaneous. His hands formed seals faster than the human eye could track. Wind style, pressure wall. A visible distortion in the air materialized between Wanda and the monster, the concentrated wind pressure catching the creature mid-lunge and driving it backward with concussive force. The beast crashed against Naruto's boundary seals, the magical barrier flickering but holding. "I need 30 seconds with the portal," Naruto called out, already moving toward Wanda. "Can you two keep our friend occupied?" Tony fired another salvo, this time targeting the soft tissue beneath the creature's jaw. "What's 30 seconds between interdimensional colleagues? Just make it count." Wanda's eyes met Naruto's, a silent understanding passing between them. With a graceful twist of her hands, she redirected her energy from the portal to the creature, crimson tendrils wrapping around its multiple limbs like ethereal restraints. "I'll hold it," she promised, the veins at her temples prominent with effort. "Do what you need to do." Naruto reached the area directly beneath the portal and looked up into the swirling vortex. The time stone in his headband pulsed, responding to his intent before he even channeled chakra into it. "Let's see who's pulling the strings," he murmured, his right hand forming a half-ram seal while his left created a complex mystical gesture the Ancient One had taught him during his first year at Kamartage. Green energy spiraled from the time stone, intertwining with his blue chakra as it shot upward into the portal. The dimensional tier's edges began to crystallize, the flow of time within the aperture slowing until Naruto could perceive the subtle manipulations keeping it open. What he saw made his heart stutter. Through the slowed portal, barely visible in the chaotic energy, was a laboratory filled with equipment both magical and technological in nature. At its center stood a figure in a modified Hydra uniform, hands extended toward the portal, maintaining it through some hybrid of science and sorcery. But what truly froze Naruto's blood was what hung suspended on the laboratory wall behind the Hydra operative, a tattered but unmistakable forehead protector bearing the symbol of the Hidden Sound Village. "Impossible," he whispered, his concentration wavering for a critical moment. The portal pulsed, breaking free from the time manipulation. The creature, sensing the distraction, let out another reality-warping roar and surged against Wanda's restraints with renewed vigor. "Whatever you're doing, do it faster." Tony shouted, launching a barrage of micromissiles that exploded against the creature's hide. Naruto snapped back to the present, pushing aside the shock of what he'd glimpsed. There would be time to process that revelation later, if they survived. "Change of plans," he called out, hands already forming a new sequence of seals. "We're not just closing the portal, we're redirecting it. Wanda, I need your chaos magic to destabilize the current anchor point." Without hesitation, Wanda shifted her approach, maintaining restraints on the creature with her right hand while her left sent spiraling tendrils of scarlet energy toward the portal's edges. "Tony, I need an electromagnetic pulse at these coordinates," Naruto continued, a shadow clone appearing beside Stark to share precise calculations. "Time it exactly with my mark." "Since when did you become the tactical genius?" Tony quipped, but the clone could see his armor's systems already reconfiguring to deliver exactly what Naruto had requested. Naruto reached deep within himself, tapping the wellspring of energy he normally left untouched in this dimension. Orange chakra bubbled around him, taking on a golden hue as he entered Six Paths Sage mode for the first time since arriving in this world. The power surged through him, familiar yet different in this reality. The Ancient One had theorized that the natural laws of this dimension altered how his chakra manifested, enhancing certain properties while limiting others. In this moment, Naruto was grateful for the changes, the golden energy flowed more smoothly into the mystic arts patterns he'd mastered. "Hold tight," he warned his allies as golden chakra arms extended from his back, weaving complex patterns in the air that left glowing symbols hanging suspended around the portal. 3, 2, 1. Now. Several things happened simultaneously. Tony released a precisely calibrated electromagnetic pulse that disrupted the scientific components maintaining the portal from the other side. Wanda's chaos magic destabilized the mystical anchor points, causing the portal to fluctuate wildly. And Naruto slammed his palms together, the time stone blazing on his forehead as he executed a technique of his own creation, one that merged the principles of Flying Thunder God with the dimensional manipulation of the mystic arts. Sage Art, Dimensional Reflection Seal. The portal collapsed inward, then inverted, the laboratory glimpsed earlier suddenly visible to all of them as the aperture reversed its polarity. The Hydra operative's expression of shock was visible for only a moment before the creature, still partially connected to the original dimension, was violently yanked backward through the inverted portal. The dimensional tier snapped shut with a thunderclap that shattered windows for blocks around, despite Naruto's containment barrier. Silence fell across the park, broken only by the distant wail of sirens and the heavy breathing of the three heroes. Naruto's golden aura faded as he dropped to one knee, the toll of the technique evident. The time stone dimmed against his forehead, its power temporarily diminished by such precise manipulation. Wanda was at his side in an instant, her hand on his shoulder. "What did you see?" she asked quietly, having caught his reaction during the brief connection to the other side. Before he could answer, Tony landed beside them, his armor showing scorch marks and dents from the battle. "I'm guessing that wasn't in the standard Sorcerer Supreme playbook," he remarked, studying Naruto with the calculating gaze that had identified dozens of threats before they fully manifested. "Want to share what spooked you enough to perform what looked suspiciously like an interdimensional return to sender?" Naruto slowly rose to his feet, his expression uncharacteristically grim. "Someone on the other side was using technology from my world, combined with this world's science and magic." The implication hung heavy in the air between them. "That's not possible," Wanda said, her accent thickening with concern. "The barriers between your dimension and this one were sealed when you arrived. That's what the Ancient One told us." "Apparently," Naruto replied, "someone found a way around that particular problem." Tony's faceplate retracted, revealing an unusually serious expression. "All 4 incursions are contained. Whatever came through at the other locations was small-scale compared to your friend here." He gestured to where the creature had been. "But if they were diversions? Then the real purpose was observation," Naruto finished. "They wanted to see how we'd respond, and maybe what I'd do specifically." His shadow clones dispersed across the city simultaneously released their techniques and disappeared in puffs of smoke, their memories and experiences flowing back into him. Each had faced relatively minor dimensional breaches, easily contained with standard methods. Nothing that would have required the Sorcerer Supreme's direct attention under normal circumstances. "We need to contact the others," Naruto decided. "This isn't random. Someone's testing the boundaries between dimensions deliberately, and they have knowledge they shouldn't possess." The New York sanctum had evolved significantly since Naruto had inherited it. The austere interior maintained by its previous master had gradually transformed, reflecting its new guardian's personality while preserving its essential function as a mystical stronghold. The main atrium now featured a curious blend of traditional mystical artifacts in glass cases alongside framed scrolls bearing elaborate sealing formulas from the shinobi world. The hardwood floors were partially covered with tatami mats in the central meeting area, where low tables and cushions had replaced some of the antique furniture. The scent of green tea and occasionally ramen mingled with the usual aromas of incense and ancient parchment. Most striking was the modified facade visible from the street. The unassuming brownstone exterior now incorporated a small, functioning ramen shop on the ground floor called Ichiraku's Dimensional Delights. It served as both Naruto's nod to his home and an unexpectedly effective cover operation. Few supernatural threats expected to find one of Earth's primary mystical sanctuaries behind a busy noodle restaurant. In the upper levels of the sanctum, the circular chamber reserved for mystical research had been transformed into a war room of sorts. A 3-dimensional model of New York hovered in the center, magical markers indicating the locations of the recent incursions. Natasha Romanov studied the pattern with narrowed eyes, her analytical mind identifying potential connections invisible to others. She stood with her arms crossed, red hair falling just past her shoulders, wearing civilian clothes rather than her tactical gear, though the outline of at least 3 concealed weapons was visible to Naruto's trained eye. 4 simultaneous breaches, forming a perfect square around Manhattan, she observed, circling the projection. With a 5th, larger breach at the center. Classic distraction pattern. But distraction from what? Wong asked, manipulating the magical display to zoom out, showing the global positioning of other mystical sanctums and known dimensional weak points. From this, Naruto said, entering the chamber with Wanda close behind. He gestured, and the projection shifted to display his memory of the laboratory glimpsed through the portal. The image wavered, details blurring except for the unmistakable Sound Village headband mounted on the wall. Natasha's posture changed subtly, a minute tensing that most would miss. That's a Hydra advanced research facility. I recognize the equipment configuration. Her green eyes fixed on Naruto. The real question is why they have artifacts from your world. The unspoken implication hung in the air, someone had breached the dimensional barriers before, either reaching into Naruto's world or receiving objects from it. The dimensional seal should have prevented any form of transfer, Wong stated, his normally stoic expression betraying concern. When the Ancient One brought you through during the final battle against Kaguya, she used the last stable connection point before sealing it permanently. Naruto paced across the tatami mats, hands clasped behind his back. 6 years ago, in the midst of the 4th Great Ninja War, he had been fighting alongside Sasuke against Kaguya Otsutsuki when a dimensional rift, later revealed to be the Ancient One's doing, had pulled him into this world. She had explained that the multiverse was threatened by Kaguya's dimensional manipulations and required his unique energy to help stabilize the boundaries. By the time the immediate crisis had passed, the connection points had collapsed. The Ancient One had offered to search for another way to send him home, but warned that the process might take decades. Instead, seeing his potential, she had offered him an alternative, training as her successor. Now, it seemed, someone had found what she could not, a way to bridge the dimensions again. It might not be what we think, Wanda suggested, crimson energy dancing between her fingertips as she manipulated the projection to enhance certain details. The headband could have come through with you. Perhaps someone has been collecting artifacts connected to your arrival. Or artifacts connected to any dimensional disturbance, Natasha added. Hydra has specialized divisions focused on exactly this kind of research. After New York, the Battle of Greenwich, Sokovia, they've had plenty of opportunities to gather residual energy signatures and materials. Naruto shook his head, unconvinced. That particular style of headband was rare even in my world, it belonged to a hidden village that had been disbanded years before I left. The chances of it randomly appearing here. A sudden ripple passed through the mystical ward surrounding the sanctum, interrupting his thought. All 4 of them tensed, hands moving to weapons or preparing spells. The disturbance wasn't an attack but a notification, someone with approved access was arriving. A golden portal opened in the center of the room, and through it stepped a tall black woman in an intricately designed royal blue and silver outfit that combined traditional African aesthetics with advanced technological components. Princess Shuri, Wong greeted with a respectful bow. Master Wong, she replied with a brief nod before turning to Naruto. Sorcerer Supreme. Despite the formal address, her eyes held a familiar warmth. I came as soon as I analyzed the energy readings from New York. They match the anomalies we've been tracking in Wakanda. Naruto's expression sharpened. You've had similar incursions? Not incursions, Shuri clarified, approaching the hovering projection and manipulating it with practiced ease, adding new data points from a kimoyo bead. Something more subtle. Microscopic fluctuations in the dimensional barrier, concentrated around areas with high vibranium concentrations. The display reconfigured to show Wakanda, with pinpoint markers indicating the pattern she described. Unlike the New York incidents, these disturbances formed a spiral pattern, gradually moving inward toward the heart of Wakanda's vibranium deposits. We believed it was simply a natural reaction between vibranium and background dimensional energies, she continued. Until 2 days ago, when our sensors detected a momentary transmission, a signal passing through one of these weak points into another dimension. Naruto and Wanda exchanged alarmed glances. Did you trace it? Natasha asked, already anticipating the answer. Shuri's expression confirmed her suspicion. We tried. The signal vanished into what our scientists could only describe as dimensional static. But, she hesitated, glancing at Naruto, the energy signature had similarities to the readings we took when you demonstrated chakra manipulation during your visit to Wakanda last year. A heavy silence settled over the room as the implications became clear. Someone is attempting to establish communication with my world, Naruto concluded. Or something worse. The question remains, who? Wong directed their attention back to the Hydra laboratory image. This facility, can it be located? Natasha stepped forward. I can work on that. But Hydra has thousands of cells operating independently. Even if we find this particular lab, it might not lead us to the mastermind. It's somewhere to start, Naruto decided. He turned to Shuri. Would you be willing to share Wakanda's sensor technology? If we can establish a global monitoring network specifically calibrated to detect these dimensional anomalies. Already done, Shuri replied with a hint of pride, tossing another Kimoyo bead that expanded into a holographic interface. This will link with your mystical detection systems. I've also taken the liberty of creating an algorithm that predicts potential weak points based on the patterns we've observed. Naruto smiled despite the gravity of the situation. Shuri's brilliance never ceased to amaze him, the perfect blend of scientific genius and intuitive understanding that allowed her to bridge technology and mysticism in ways few others could comprehend. Thank you, he said sincerely. This will help immensely. What do you need from the Avengers? Natasha asked, already tapping a message into her communicator. Stark's already involved, and where Tony goes, the others tend to follow. Surveillance for now, Naruto replied after a moment's consideration. If whoever is behind this can open portals at will, we need to be ready to respond instantly anywhere in the world. Wong nodded in agreement. I'll alert the masters at Kamartaj and the other sanctums. If dimensional boundaries are being tampered with, all mystical practitioners should be on alert. And what about us? Wanda asked quietly, her question weighted with unspoken meaning. She, more than most, understood the dangers of dimensional manipulation. Her own powers stemmed from exposure to an infinity stone, creating connections to energy sources beyond normal comprehension. Naruto looked at each of them in turn, Wong with his unwavering dedication to mystical protection, Natasha's calculating intelligence and combat prowess, Shuri's brilliant mind and technological innovation, Wanda's raw power and intuitive grasp of chaotic energies. We investigate, he decided. Starting with what we know and working outward. Shuri's monitoring system will alert us to new disturbances. Natasha will track down the Hydra connection. Wong will coordinate with mystical practitioners worldwide. And Wanda and I will attempt to understand exactly what kind of breach we're dealing with. His hand rose unconsciously to the time stone embedded in his headband. If necessary, I'll use the stone to look forward and backward along possible timelines, see if I can identify when and how this all started. You hate doing that, Wanda noted softly, aware of how the stone's temporal abilities disturbed him on a fundamental level. Unlike the Ancient One, who had viewed time as fluid and malleable, Naruto's shinobi upbringing had instilled a deep respect for the natural flow of cause and effect. Some things are worth the discomfort, he replied simply. As the others moved to their assigned tasks, Natasha lingered, her perceptive gaze studying him. You're worried this is somehow your fault, she stated rather than asked, pitching her voice low enough that only he would hear. That your presence here weakened the barriers permanently. Naruto's eyes widened slightly at her insight. Despite years of working together, her ability to read him still caught him off guard. The thought had crossed my mind, he admitted. The Ancient One warned that my chakra would have unpredictable effects on this dimension's mystical framework. What if simply being here has been slowly eroding the boundaries? Natasha stepped closer, her proximity offering a subtle comfort that belied her typically reserved demeanor. From what I understand of your history, you've spent your life taking responsibility for things beyond your control. Her voice held no judgment, only understanding. This isn't on you, Naruto. Whatever's happening, we'll face it together. Her directness, so different from the political maneuvering and obscure wisdom common among mystics, was refreshing. In his years as Sorcerer Supreme, Naruto had found himself increasingly drawn to Natasha's company for precisely this reason. She saw the world clearly, accepted its complications, and moved forward without hesitation. Thank you, he replied simply, knowing she preferred straightforward acknowledgement to elaborate expressions of gratitude. She nodded once, then turned away, already focused on the task ahead. As she reached the doorway, she paused. By the way, she added without looking back, Fury wants a briefing. I told him you'd portal directly to the helicarrier tomorrow at 0900. Naruto groaned. He still hasn't forgiven me for the last time I opened a portal on the command deck without warning. A rare smile curved Natasha's lips. That's why I suggested the hangar bay instead. Less computerized equipment to malfunction when exposed to your, what did Stark call it? Mystical chakra voodoo. His technical terminology needs work, Naruto replied dryly. After Natasha departed, Naruto remained in the war room alone, studying the projected patterns of dimensional disturbances. Something about their arrangement nagged at his subconscious, a familiar pattern he couldn't quite place. On impulse, he activated the Time Stone, focusing its power not on viewing potential futures but on his own memories. Green energy swirled around him as he searched through countless mental images from his former world. He stopped abruptly when he found it, a sealing jutsu diagram from one of the forbidden scrolls he'd studied during his training with Jiraiya. The pattern of dimensional weakening across Earth matched it almost exactly. It wasn't a random distribution or the result of natural phenomena. Someone was attempting to create a planet-wide summoning circle. The question was, what were they trying to summon? Dreams came rarely to Naruto since becoming Sorcerer Supreme. The mystical disciplines taught at Kamartage included specific techniques for restful meditation that typically replaced normal sleep cycles. When dreams did manifest, they often contained significant meanings or warnings. This night, as he finally succumbed to exhaustion after hours of research, Naruto found himself standing in a familiar landscape, the valley where he and Sasuke had fought their final battle. The terrain was exactly as he remembered, shattered earth, scorched trees, and the distinctive statues partially destroyed by their conflict. It's been a while, came a voice from behind him. Naruto turned to find Kurama, the nine-tailed fox, sitting on his haunches, 9 massive tails swaying gently behind him. Unlike the monstrous form Naruto had first encountered as a child, Kurama now appeared as he had in their shared mindscape after they had become true partners, still enormous and intimidating, but with an intelligent gleam in his eyes that reflected their hard-won mutual respect. Kurama, Naruto breathed, genuinely surprised. While the fox remained sealed within him in this dimension, their communication had become limited, as though the different metaphysical laws affected their connection. Is this really you, or just a dream? The fox's lips curled into something resembling a smile. A bit of both, perhaps. The barriers are thinning, Kit. Not just between dimensions, but between consciousnesses. He raised one massive paw, gesturing to the landscape around them. This isn't merely your memory, it's a junction point. Naruto's eyes widened as understanding dawned. You mean? Your world and this one are bleeding together in specific ways, Kurama confirmed. I've been aware of it for some time, but could not break through to tell you until now. The incursions today are merely symptoms of a deeper problem. The fox's expression grew grave. Someone is attempting to harness the power of both worlds simultaneously. They seek to use your chakra network, specifically, the connection you maintain with the natural energy of your home dimension, as a conduit. Naruto frowned, processing this revelation. But why? What could they possibly gain from? He stopped abruptly as a terrible possibility occurred to him. The tailed beasts. They're trying to access the tailed beasts through me. Kurama nodded slowly. You remain the only human to have successfully contained portions of chakra from all 9 bijou. Even across dimensions, that connection persists, faint but detectable to those with the right knowledge and tools. But who in this world would even know about the tailed beasts? The Ancient One never shared the details of my world with others. The massive fox tilted his head, regarding Naruto with ancient eyes. Are you certain of that? 6 years is a long time, even for one as long-lived as she was. And secrets have a way of escaping, especially those of great power. Before Naruto could respond, the dreamscape shimmered, the familiar battlefield dissolving around them. Through the fading imagery, Naruto caught a glimpse of something unexpected, a flash of pale skin and long dark hair, reminiscent of Orochimaru but somehow different. Someone comes, Kurama growled, his form beginning to fade. Remember. Kit, the connection goes both ways. What they can take from your world, you can also draw from it. Wait. Naruto called out, reaching toward the disappearing fox. What does that mean? How can I? But the dream collapsed entirely, and Naruto found himself sitting upright in his meditation chamber within the sanctum, breathing heavily. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool air, and the time stone pulsed rhythmically against his skin. A soft knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Enter, he called, composing himself quickly. The door opened to reveal Wanda, concern evident in her expression. You were projecting, she explained, stepping into the room. I could feel your distress from the library. In the soft glow of the mystical lamps, her features seemed softer, the usual tension she carried partially relaxed. She had changed from her combat attire into simpler clothes, dark pants and a loose crimson sweater, but the energy that perpetually surrounded her remained visible to Naruto's trained senses, swirling in complex patterns that reflected her emotional state. Sorry, he offered with a small smile. Unusual dream. Not just a dream, I think. She sat gracefully beside him on the meditation mat, her posture mirroring his own. Your energy signature changed, it was more like when you tap into the fox's power, but different. Purer somehow. Naruto nodded, unsurprised by her perception. Of all his allies in this dimension, Wanda had the most intuitive understanding of his unique energies. Her own powers, derived from the Mind Stone but transformed by her innate potential, operated on principles that bridged the gap between this world's magic and his chakra. I spoke with Kurama, he explained, then shared the details of the dream conversation. Wanda listened attentively, her brow furrowing as she absorbed the implications. If someone is trying to use you as a conduit to access these tailed beasts, she said carefully, then they must understand both the metaphysical principles of this dimension and the chakra system of yours. Exactly, Naruto agreed. Which narrows the list of suspects considerably. The Ancient One had other disciples, Wanda pointed out. Could one of them have learned about your world and sought out Hydra as partners? It's possible. Naruto rose to his feet, pacing the small room as he considered. Mordo turned away from Kamartaj's teachings after the Ancient One's death, believing we had corrupted natural law. But this doesn't feel like his approach, he would consider dimensional merging an abomination, not a goal. What about someone from your world? Wanda suggested. You've mentioned others who could perform dimensional techniques. Naruto paused, the memory of the Sound Village headband flashing through his mind again. There were very few with that capability, and most were gone by the time I left. Unless. A sudden realization struck him. When the Ancient One had pulled him from his dimension during the battle with Kaguya, the dimensional distortions had already been severe. What if someone else had been drawn through during that chaotic period? Someone who had remained hidden in this world, biding their time and gathering resources? The Sanctum's warning system activated before he could voice this theory, a mystical chime resonating through the building. Both of them were immediately alert, moving together toward the central chamber where Wong was already consulting a glowing magical display. Another incursion? Naruto asked, noting the librarian's grave expression. Not an incursion, Wong replied. A message. He gestured to the display, which showed a specific location pulsing with distinctive energy. Someone is using chakra, your kind of chakra, in Central Park. They appear to be deliberately trying to get your attention. Naruto's expression hardened. Then let's not keep them waiting. Central Park lay eerily silent under the pre-dawn light, empty of the usual joggers and early morning visitors. New York's finest had established a perimeter around Bethesda Fountain at the request of the Avengers, though they remained at a safe distance, wary after the previous day's events. Naruto emerged from a portal directly onto the plaza surrounding the famous Angel of the Waters statue, Wanda and Natasha flanking him. All three were in full combat gear, Naruto in his modified Sorcerer Supreme attire with its distinctive orange and black accents, Wanda in her Scarlet combat uniform, and Natasha in her Black Widow tactical suit. Thermal imaging shows one figure at the center of the fountain, Natasha reported quietly, scanning the area with practiced efficiency. No visible weapons, but energy readings are off the charts. Similar to your signature, Wanda added, her hands already glowing with crimson energy. But, distorted somehow. Naruto nodded, extending his senses. What he felt confirmed their observations, chakra, undeniably, but twisted in a way that felt wrong. Corrupted, as though merged with something that altered its fundamental nature. Stay alert, he cautioned, stepping forward. Whoever this is, they've gone to considerable trouble to arrange this meeting. As they approached the fountain, the water began to behave strangely, rising in spiraling columns that defied gravity, forming shapes reminiscent of hand seals before dissolving back into the basin. A clear demonstration of water-style jutsu, but with a precision and artistic quality Naruto had rarely seen. A figure stood at the fountain center, perfectly balanced atop the water's surface, another unmistakable shinobi technique. They wore a hooded cloak that concealed their features, but the posture and chakra control revealed extensive training. Uzumaki Naruto, the figure called, their voice carrying clearly across the water. Or do you prefer Sorcerer Supreme now? The accent was unmistakably from the Hidden Leaf Village, specifically, the formal diction common among higher-ranking shinobi. Naruto's heart raced with both hope and wariness. Who are you? He replied in the same language, signaling Wanda and Natasha to hold position. The figure lowered their hood, revealing a woman with striking features, pale skin, dark eyes, and long black hair pulled back in a style that tickled at Naruto's memory. She appeared to be in her 30s, with the ageless quality common to powerful ninja. My name would mean nothing to you, she replied, switching to flawless English. I was very young when you left our world. But you knew my father well, or rather, you knew his ambitions. She reached up and brushed her hair away from her neck, revealing a familiar cursed seal pattern that sent a chill down Naruto's spine. Orochimaru, he breathed, immediately dropping into a defensive stance. The woman smiled, a cold, calculating expression. My father sends his regards. He found your abrupt departure most inconvenient. The power vacuum it created took years to stabilize. Orochimaru had no children, Naruto stated flatly, though doubt crept into his mind. The snake Sannin had conducted countless experiments involving genetic manipulation and cloning. A daughter, biological or created, wasn't outside the realm of possibility. I am Misumi, she said simply. Conceived through methods you would find distasteful, no doubt, but his daughter nonetheless. And his most successful subject. Her eyes gleamed with pride. The only one capable of replicating his dimensional research. How did you get to this dimension? Wanda demanded, stepping forward, her accent thickening with tension. Masumi's gaze shifted to her, assessing. Ah, the Chaos Witch. Your reputation precedes you. Her attention returned to Naruto. As for your question, I followed the trail you left when you were pulled from our world. It took years to reconstruct the pathway, but my father's notes on dimensional theory proved invaluable. As did certain resources I found in this world. Hydra, Natasha stated, her expression neutral but her body poised for action. Among others, Masumi acknowledged with a slight nod. This world has so many interesting organizations with compatible goals. Though their understanding of chakra was primitively theoretical until I arrived. Naruto's mind raced, connecting pieces of the puzzle. The incursions yesterday, they were your doing. A necessary test of the barriers, she confirmed. And an opportunity to observe Earth's defenders in action. I must say, your adaptation to this world's mystical arts is impressive. Father will be quite interested in the details. If you think I'm letting you report back to Orochimaru, you're mistaken, Naruto warned, chakra beginning to swirl visibly around him. Masumi's smile widened. Oh, I've already shared much with him. The connection works both ways, as I'm sure your fox friend explained in your dream. She made a simple hand sign, and the water around her feet formed a small reflective surface. Within it, an image appeared, Orochimaru's face, watching the conversation with evident interest. Naruto-kun, the snake Sanin's image greeted, his voice distorted but recognizable. How fascinating to see what you've become. The Ancient One chose well, it seems. Cold shock washed over Naruto. You know about the Ancient One? We had the pleasure of corresponding briefly, Orochimaru replied, amusement evident in his tone. She reached across dimensions seeking information about you, your capabilities, your potential. I was happy to provide insights in exchange for knowledge of her reality. You're lying, Naruto insisted, though uncertainty gnawed at him. The Ancient One had never mentioned contact with anyone from his world. Am I? Orochimaru's image rippled as he chuckled. Ask yourself why she selected you specifically from all the powerful shinobi present during that battle. Why she never found a way to send you home, despite her mastery of dimensional travel. Before Naruto could respond, Masumi made another hand sign, and the water mirror dissolved. Enough pleasantries. I came with a proposition, not to fight. She reached into her cloak and removed a small scroll, which she tossed toward Naruto. These are the coordinates and time of our next major experiment. You're welcome to try stopping it, or you could join us instead. The scroll hovered in midair, suspended by invisible chakra threads, halfway between them. Join you? Naruto repeated incredulously. In what? Creating a permanent bridge between dimensions, Masumi explained, as though discussing something mundane. Imagine it, Naruto, a pathway home. Access to everyone and everything you left behind. Your friends, your village, your dream of becoming Hokage, all of it within reach again. For the briefest moment, longing flashed across Naruto's face, so quick that only Natasha, with her trained eye for human micro-expressions, caught it. At what cost, he demanded, his voice steady despite the emotional turmoil beneath. Masumi shrugged elegantly. Some initial instability between realities. Perhaps a few localized dimensional collapses. But eventually, equilibrium would establish itself. You're talking about potentially destroying both worlds in the process, Wanda interjected, scarlet energy intensifying around her hands. Progress requires sacrifice, Masumi replied dismissively. My father understood that. Deep down, so do you, Naruto. How many lives were risked in your journey to master the Ninetales' power? How many died in the war that shaped you? That's different, Naruto growled. Is it? Masumi challenged. You've gained immense power here as Sorcerer Supreme. Combined with your natural abilities, you could help ensure the process succeeds with minimal damage. Or you can oppose us and guarantee greater chaos. She stepped backward, the water rippling beneath her feet. The choice is yours. With a series of rapid hand signs, she created a swirling vortex in the fountain water, not a portal created by mystical arts, but a genuine spacetime ninjutsu. 3 days, Naruto. Review the scroll and decide where your true home lies. She stepped into the vortex and vanished, the water returning to normal as if nothing had occurred. Silence fell across the plaza as Naruto stared at the hovering scroll, his expression unreadable. After a long moment, he reached out and took it, breaking the chakra threads with a gesture. She was lying, Wanda said quietly, placing a hand on his shoulder. About the Ancient One, about everything. Maybe, Naruto acknowledged, tucking the scroll away. But some of what she said fits with things I've wondered about for years. He looked toward the lightning eastern sky. Why me? Of all the people fighting in that war, why did the Ancient One choose me specifically? Because she saw something in you worth believing in, Natasha answered simply. The same thing we all see. Naruto appreciated her directness, but uncertainty lingered. 6 years of building a life in this dimension, forming bonds, accepting responsibilities, finding purpose as Sorcerer Supreme, and yet the pull of home had never fully faded. We need to analyze this scroll, he said finally, pushing personal doubts aside. And prepare for whatever they're planning. 3 days isn't much time. As they turned to leave, a subtle shift in the air caught Naruto's attention. The time stone pulsed against his forehead, reacting to something beyond normal perception. He looked back at the fountain and, for just an instant, thought he glimpsed something impossible, the ghostly image of Konoha's Hokage mountain, its faces watching him across dimensions before fading back into the dawn light. The barriers between worlds were thinning indeed. And somewhere between them, Naruto would need to find the truth, about Masumi's claims, about the Ancient One's plans, and about where he truly belonged. Chapter 2, Threads of Fate. Dawn painted the ancient stones of Kamartaj in hues of amber and gold, the Himalayan mountains rising like sentinels beyond its walls. Within the central courtyard, 24 students stood in precise formation, eyes closed in concentration as tendrils of energy, some golden, others tinged with the traditional orange of mystical arts, circled their extended hands. Naruto moved silently between them, his traditional Sorcerer Supreme garments replaced with a simpler outfit that blended Kamartaj aesthetics with elements of his shinobi heritage. The time stone remained embedded in his headband, but its glow was subdued, almost dormant. Balance, he instructed, his voice carrying across the courtyard without raising its volume, a technique he'd learned from the Ancient One. Feel the boundary between this world's mystical energy and your own life force. They are not separate forces to be wielded independently, but complementary aspects of the same universal power. He paused beside a young woman whose hands trembled with effort, sweat beading on her forehead as she struggled to maintain the delicate energy pattern he'd demonstrated. Chen, he addressed her gently, you're forcing the energy rather than guiding it. Remember what we discussed about intention versus control. Her eyes remained closed, frustration evident in her furrowed brow. I'm trying, Master Uzumaki, but it feels resistant. May I? He asked, waiting for her nod before placing his palm lightly above her outstretched hands. Blue chakra flowed from his fingers, intermingling with her orange mystical energy, creating a momentary bridge between the two forces. There, feel that? The harmony when they synchronize? Chen's expression relaxed, her energy pattern stabilizing as she found the resonance point between disciplines. A small smile curved her lips as the combined energies formed a perfect mandala pattern in the air before her. Yes. I feel it now. Naruto stepped back, observing as she maintained the pattern independently. Excellent. The barrier between mystic arts and chakra exists primarily in our minds. Once you recognize their shared essence, the techniques become intuitive rather than forced. He continued his circuit of the courtyard, making minor adjustments to each student's form or offering quiet words of encouragement. These monthly training sessions at Kamartaj had become a cornerstone of his tenure as Sorcerer Supreme, a forum to share the integrated magical system he developed by merging the Ancient One's teachings with his shinobi techniques. Wong observed from the perimeter, his stoic expression betraying only the faintest hint of approval. Unlike some of Kamartaj's more traditional masters, he had embraced Naruto's innovations, recognizing their potential to strengthen Earth's mystical defenses. Remember, Naruto called out to the assembled students, these techniques aren't meant to replace traditional mystic arts, but to complement them. When threats emerge that resist conventional spells, these hybrid approaches offer alternatives. He brought his hands together in a final demonstration, combining a simple wind-style jutsu with a mystical reinforcement pattern. The resulting technique manifested as a sphere of visible air currents, laced with golden symbols that stabilized and amplified the effect. Each of you possesses a unique energy signature, he continued. Your backgrounds, experiences, and intentions shape how these techniques manifest. Embrace that individuality rather than striving for uniform results. With a respectful bow, he concluded the session. Practice these patterns daily. We'll explore more advanced applications next month. As the students dispersed, many bowing deeply as they passed, Wong approached with a knowing expression. You've come far from the brash young man who argued that hand seals were superior to mystical gestures. Naruto chuckled, memories of his early training surfacing. I was stubborn. Was? Wong raised an eyebrow. Fair point, Naruto conceded with a grin. Still am. But you have to admit, the integrated approach has proven effective. Wong nodded seriously. The Ancient One would be pleased with your innovations. Though perhaps less so with the ramen shop you've installed in the New York sanctum. She had a sweet tooth, Naruto countered. I think she'd appreciate good food in any form. Their casual banter faded as a familiar golden portal began forming at the courtyard's edge. Both men tensed slightly, unexpected arrivals, even from allies, had taken on new significance since the dimensional incursions began. Relief washed over Naruto as he recognized the elegant silhouette that stepped through. Clea's platinum hair caught the morning light, the white streak at her temple particularly pronounced against her otherworldly pallor. Her attire, flowing garments in deep purple and silver, marked her as no ordinary sorceress. Master Wong, she greeted with formal precision. Sorcerer Supreme. Though her words remained respectful, her violet eyes held a warmth reserved specifically for Naruto. Princess, Wong acknowledged with a slight bow before tactfully excusing himself. I'll see that the scrolls you requested are prepared, Naruto. As Wong departed, Naruto approached Clea, genuine pleasure warming his features. This is unexpected. I thought you were investigating the dimensional anomalies in the dark dimension's outer regions. I was, she confirmed, her formal posture relaxing slightly. Unlike most denizens of Earth, Clea's movements possessed an ethereal quality, each gesture precise yet flowing, as though partially unbound by conventional physics. Until something concerning occurred. She extended her hand, palm upward, to reveal what appeared to be a small crystalline shard emanating a faint purplish glow. This formed at the boundary between our dimensions yesterday. I've never seen anything like it. Naruto examined the shard without touching it, extending his senses toward the object. What he felt caused him to draw back sharply. This contains chakra, he stated, blue eyes narrowing. Not pure, but unmistakable. Yes, Clea agreed, her melodic voice tinged with worry. I suspected as much, given its resonance pattern. But chakra should not exist naturally within the dark dimension's energy structure. It doesn't, Naruto confirmed, carefully creating a containment field with a series of quick hand seals. The transparent barrier materialized around the shard as Clea released it into his care. This was introduced deliberately. Clea's expression grew troubled, the temperature around them dropping several degrees in response to her emotional state, a side effect of her connection to the dark dimension's energies that she'd never fully managed to suppress. My uncle remains imprisoned, she stated firmly, referring to Dormammu, ruler of the dark dimension and one of the most powerful mystical entities Naruto had encountered since arriving in this world. But his followers have grown increasingly active. If they've somehow made contact with someone from your dimension. It gets worse, Naruto said grimly. Yesterday I encountered someone from my world, Orochimaru's daughter, or so she claims. She's working with Hydra, creating deliberate incursions between dimensions. Clea's eyes widened. Then my timing is fortuitous. I came directly here rather than the sanctum because I sensed you were at Camartage. How did you? Naruto began, before understanding dawned. The connection between them had grown steadily stronger since their first meeting 3 years ago, when he'd helped free Clea from Dormammu's influence. The sorceress princess had since become one of his most valued allies and confidants, her understanding of interdimensional dynamics proving invaluable on countless occasions. And perhaps something more, though neither had fully acknowledged the deepening bond between them. I've been monitoring the barriers between dimensions more closely since the New York incidents, she explained. Your energy signature has become distinctive to me. A faint lavender blush colored her pale cheeks at this admission. Naruto nodded, understanding the significance of her words. For beings like Clea, attuned to the mystical frequencies of multiple realities, developing such specific awareness of another's energy was rare, and deeply personal. We need to get this to the sanctum for analysis, he decided, securing the crystalline shard in a mystical container drawn from a pocket dimension. Wong is preparing information on chakra theory that might help us understand what Masumi is planning. Masumi? Clea inquired. Orochimaru's daughter, Naruto clarified as they walked toward the main temple. She claims to be building a permanent bridge between my dimension and this one. Such a bridge would be catastrophic, Clea stated with certainty. The dimensional constants are too different, a forced connection would create cascading instabilities. That's what I feared, Naruto sighed. But she seemed confident in their approach. She mentioned localized dimensional collapses as an acceptable risk. Clea's expression hardened. Those with power often consider destruction acceptable when it occurs beyond their sight. Her voice carried the weight of personal experience. As a princess of the dark dimension, she had witnessed firsthand the consequences of Dormammu's casual disregard for worlds he conquered. We won't let it happen, Naruto assured her, his hand briefly touching her shoulder in a gesture of solidarity. Even through the fabric of her garment, he felt the distinctive cool energy that emanated from her form, not unpleasant, but a constant reminder of her otherworldly nature. The contact lasted only a moment before they reached the temple entrance, where a junior master awaited them with evident anxiety. Sorcerer Supreme, the young man greeted with a hasty bow. You have visitors at the gateway. Wakandan Royal Transport. Princess Shuri insists it's urgent. Naruto exchanged a quick glance with Clea. The threads are converging, she observed quietly. So it seems, he agreed, then addressed the messenger. Please inform Princess Shuri that I'll meet her immediately. And have Master Wong join us in the reliquary chamber afterward. As the messenger hurried away, Clea's expression grew thoughtful. This is no coincidence. The dimensional barriers are thinning across multiple planes simultaneously. Such synchronicity suggests deliberate orchestration. Or something worse, Naruto replied, his mind racing with possibilities. A natural response to a greater disturbance we haven't yet detected. For a moment, neither spoke, the weight of potential catastrophe hanging between them. Then Clea did something unexpected. She reached out and gently adjusted the collar of his robe where it had become slightly askew during the training session. Whatever comes, she said softly, her melodic voice carrying a depth of meaning beyond the simple words, you do not face it alone, Naruto Uzumaki. The gesture, intimate in its casual familiarity, caught him off guard. In his years as Sorcerer Supreme, few had bridged the respectful distance that naturally formed around one of his position. Clea, however, had never been intimidated by titles or power, perhaps because she had rejected her own royal status in the dark dimension to forge her own path. Thank you, he replied simply, knowing she would understand all he left unsaid. Together they made their way toward Camartage's main gateway, where the sleek lines of a Wakandan Royal Talon fighter stood in stark contrast to the ancient architecture surrounding it. The vessel's advanced cloaking technology had been deactivated upon landing, revealing its distinctive panther-inspired design. As they approached, the craft's primary hatch opened with a soft pneumatic hiss, extending a ramp. Shuri descended with characteristic energy, her traditional Wakandan attire modified with technological enhancements that glowed with subtle blue light. Behind her followed two Dora Milaje warriors, their vigilant posture making it clear this was no casual visit. Naruto. Shuri called out, dispensing with formal titles as she often did in person, though she maintained appropriate protocol in official settings. Your dimensional problem just became significantly more interesting, and by interesting, I mean potentially catastrophic. Despite the gravity of her words, her eyes sparkled with the intellectual excitement that difficult scientific challenges always sparked in her. It was this quality, her ability to face even the most daunting problems with innovative enthusiasm rather than fear, that had first drawn Naruto's attention during a Wakandan diplomatic visit 2 years prior. Princess Shuri, he greeted with a respectful nod that acknowledged her royal status while his smile conveyed their more personal connection. I see you've brought friends. Ao and Annika insisted, Shuri explained with a slight roll of her eyes. Apparently, when multiple dimensional anomalies appear around Wakanda's borders, my brother becomes overprotective. Imagine that. King Chala's concern is warranted, Clea interjected, studying Shuri with interest. Though they had encountered each other at various gatherings of Earth's defenders, the Princess of the Dark Dimension and the Princess of Wakanda had rarely worked together directly. Dimensional disturbances near vibranium deposits have historically preceded catastrophic events. Shuri's attention shifted to Clea, her scientific curiosity evident. Princess Clea, yes. Your thesis on quantum-dimensional interface theory was fascinating, though your mathematical models could benefit from integration with our vibranium resonance equations. Clea blinked, clearly surprised by Shuri's familiarity with her mystical research. You've read my work on dimensional boundaries. I make it a point to understand all disciplines that affect Wakanda's security, Shuri replied with a casual shrug that belied the remarkable breadth of her knowledge. Magic, science, the distinction is largely semantic when examined at fundamental levels. Naruto couldn't help but smile at the exchange. Shuri's ability to bridge scientific and mystical understanding had proven invaluable during previous collaborations. Where most scientists dismissed magical phenomena as unknowable, she approached them as simply undocumented physical principles awaiting proper analysis. Perhaps we should continue this discussion inside, he suggested, gesturing toward the temple. I have a feeling your discoveries and ours may be connected. Shuri nodded briskly. Absolutely. I've brought readings from the anomalies, samples of affected vibranium, and, she paused, pulling a small device from her pocket with a flourish, a prototype dimensional frequency analyzer I developed based on the energy patterns you demonstrated during your last visit to Wakanda. As they walked toward the temple, Ao and Annika maintaining a respectful distance behind them, Naruto noted the subtle interplay between the two princesses. Clea moved with ethereal grace, her connection to mystical energies evident in her every gesture, while Shuri practically vibrated with kinetic energy, ideas and observations constantly forming and reforming in her brilliant mind. How much has Naruto told you about chakra? Shuri asked Clea, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface of her kimoyo beads as they walked. The fundamental principles, Clea replied. Though I find the connection between his physical and spiritual energies fascinating, particularly how they interact with the dark dimension's ambient forces. Exactly. Shuri exclaimed. The binary nature of chakra, physical and spiritual energies in perfect harmony, creates a unique resonance pattern that appears to transcend conventional dimensional boundaries. I've been mapping these patterns using modified vibranium sensors, and the results are remarkable. Naruto listened to their exchange with growing appreciation for how quickly they found common ground despite their vastly different backgrounds. It reminded him of his own journey in this world, finding connections across seemingly insurmountable differences. They reached the reliquary chamber to find Wong already waiting, ancient scrolls and modern tablets arranged on a large stone table. The circular room, with its high domed ceiling inscribed with protection sigils, served as Kamartaj's most secure location for analyzing dangerous artifacts. Master Wong, Shuri greeted warmly. I've brought updated sensor data as promised. Wong acknowledged her with a nod, his usually stern expression softening slightly. The Wakandan princess had earned his respect during previous visits with her genuine interest in preserving magical knowledge alongside technological advancement. Princess Shuri. Your timing is fortunate. We've encountered a new development. He gestured to the containment field where Clea's crystal shard now hovered, surrounded by complex analytical spells. Shuri approached the artifact, her eyes widening as her Kimoyo beads automatically began scanning it. This energy signature, it matches the anomalies we detected at Wakanda's southern border. Dark dimension energy infused with chakra, Clea confirmed. A combination that should not naturally occur. Yet here it is, Shuri mused, circling the containment field. And look at this structural lattice, it's organizing itself according to principles from both energy systems simultaneously. She pressed a bead against her palm, projecting a three-dimensional model of the crystal's internal structure. The chakra components are binding to the dark dimension energy at specific nodal points, creating a stable matrix that shouldn't be possible given their contradictory vibrational states. Wong's eyebrows rose slightly, high praise from the stoic librarian. You determined all this in seconds. Shuri grinned. I've been studying similar phenomena for months. The anomalies around Wakanda began as microscopic energy fluctuations before growing into detectable incidents. She expanded the holographic display to show a map of Earth with dozens of pinpoint markers concentrated in specific regions. Each dot represents a detected chakra-infused anomaly. They were barely measurable at first, but they've been growing exponentially over the past 3 weeks. Naruto studied the pattern with growing concern. They're forming a network. Precisely, Shuri confirmed. Like acupuncture points on a planetary scale. Someone is creating an energy grid using Earth's natural ley lines as conduits, but modifying them with chakra to create new pathways. A summoning circle, Wong stated grimly. On a global scale. But summoning what? Clea questioned, her violet eyes intense as she examined the projection. And from where? Naruto's hand rose unconsciously to the time stone in his headband. Not what, he said quietly. Who? The revelation that had been forming in his mind since examining the scroll Masumi had given him finally crystallized. They're not trying to create a stable pathway between dimensions for travel or communication. They're trying to bring someone specific through, Shuri realized, quickly grasping his meaning. Someone powerful enough to require this level of preparation. Orochimaru, Naruto confirmed. Masumi isn't just working with her father, she's trying to bring him here, physically, despite the dimensional incompatibilities. The implications hung heavily in the air. Orochimaru's abilities had been formidable in their home dimension. If he gained access to this world's mystical energies as well. The scroll she gave me, Naruto continued, producing the item in question from within his robes. It doesn't just contain coordinates for their next experiment. It's actually part of the summoning formula, a piece of the puzzle she wanted me to have. Why would she give you information that could help you stop her? Wong questioned. Because she doesn't believe I will, Naruto answered, unrolling the scroll carefully. She's betting that part of me wants this to succeed, wants a connection to home restored, regardless of the cost. The admission was difficult, but necessary. In the years since becoming Sorcerer Supreme, he had built a new life, formed new bonds, accepted new responsibilities. Yet the pull of his original world, of friends left behind and promises unfulfilled, had never completely faded. She's wrong, he stated firmly, meeting each of their gazes in turn. Whatever connection might be restored isn't worth the destruction this would cause. Clea moved beside him, her cool presence steadying. The scroll itself, it contains embedded chakra patterns. Yes, Naruto nodded. Very subtle, but present. I believe it's designed to resonate with my specific energy signature, creating a localized weakening in the dimensional barrier wherever I carry it. A tracking beacon and skeleton key combined, Shuri observed, already scanning the scroll with her technology. Clever. Though it explains why the anomalies have accelerated recently, they began tracking your movements more precisely. We should destroy it, Wong suggested pragmatically. Not yet, Naruto cautioned. If we understand exactly how it functions, we might be able to create a countermeasure that disrupts their entire network. Shuri's eyes lit up at the challenge. A reverse-engineered chakra dampening field? Theoretically possible, especially if we can isolate the frequency they're using to maintain coherence across dimensional boundaries. I can assist with that analysis, Clea offered. My connection to the dark dimension gives me perspective on how they're bridging the gap between realms. As they began detailed examination of the scroll, a subtle shift in the room's atmosphere alerted Naruto to another presence. His senses, heightened by years of shinobi training and mystical practice, detected a dimensional disturbance forming, not hostile, but unexpected. A circle of blue-white energy suddenly manifested in the center of the chamber, expanding into a distinctive stepping disc unlike any portal created by traditional sling rings. Through it stepped a young woman with long blonde hair and piercing blue eyes, wearing an outfit that blended X-Men tactical gear with mystical elements. Ileana, Naruto greeted, recognizing the mutant sorceress immediately. Uzumaki, she replied, her Russian accent more pronounced than usual, suggesting stress or urgency. We have problem. Her direct speech pattern omitted unnecessary words, a habit she fell into when focused on immediate threats. The Dora Milaje warriors had shifted to protective stances at her sudden appearance, but Naruto raised a hand to indicate she wasn't a threat. Ileana Rasputina, he explained to those unfamiliar with her. Also known as Magic. X-Men member and ruler of Limbo. Partial ruler, Ileana corrected with a grimace. That's problem. Something is interfering with my dominion. Dimensional barriers between Limbo and other realms are weakening, but not through my power. She approached the holographic display without waiting for invitation, her eyes narrowing at the pattern of anomalies. These match what I've been tracking. Started in Limbo 2 weeks ago, small tiers appearing between realms that shouldn't connect directly. Naruto had first encountered Ileana during a dimensional incident involving Limbo and the Dark Dimension 3 years earlier. Her unique status as both mutant teleporter and sorceress had facilitated an unlikely alliance, her understanding of dimensional travel proving compatible with his own space-time techniques. Your stepping discs, he asked, have they been affected? She nodded sharply. Unpredictable destinations. Increased power requirements. And this, she drew the soul's word from seemingly nowhere, the mystical weapon materializing in a flash of arcane light. The blade, normally gleaming with pure mystical energy, now showed veins of unfamiliar blue power running through its structure. Chakra, Naruto confirmed, examining the sword without touching it. Somehow your weapon is absorbing it from the dimensional disturbances. Duh, Ileana agreed. Soul's word reflects my soul, my power. If it changes. She left the implication hanging. You're being affected at a fundamental level, Clea concluded, her expression grave. The dimensional contamination is reaching even Limbo, despite its insulated nature. Shuri was already adjusting her scans to include the soul's word. The frequency matches our other samples perfectly. Your connection to Limbo must make you particularly sensitive to these disruptions. More than sensitive, Ileana corrected with characteristic bluntness. Am becoming conduit. Dreams filled with strange energy and unfamiliar landscape. Mountains with faces carved in stone. Creatures with multiple tails. Naruto froze. You're seeing Konoha? The tailed beasts? Duh. Your home, yes. Recognized from descriptions you once gave. Her intense blue eyes fixed on him. Not just seeing. Feeling called there. Like part of me belongs in that dimension now. The implications were disturbing. Ileana's mutant powers already allowed her to create stepping discs between Earth and Limbo. If those abilities were being influenced by chakra, potentially connecting to his home dimension as well. You're a dimensional nexus point, Naruto realized. Just like me. They're not just using the scroll to track me, they're identifying and influencing anyone with significant dimensional manipulation abilities. A network of living conduits, Wong said, understanding dawning. Far more powerful than artificial connection points. And far more dangerous, Clea added. If these connections are being established without conscious control, the resulting pathways would be chaotic, unpredictable. Exactly what someone would want if their goal was maximum disruption rather than stable travel, Shuri concluded. Ileana sheathed her sword in a fluid motion, the weapon disappearing back into the metaphysical space from which she had drawn it. Need solution quickly. X-Men encountering increased dimensional anomalies during missions. Strange energies affecting mutant abilities unpredictably. The room fell silent as each processed the expanding scope of the threat. What had initially seemed like isolated incidents was revealing itself as a coordinated, multidimensional assault on reality's fundamental structure. Naruto's expression hardened with resolve. We need to take the offensive. Find Misumi and her operation before they complete whatever they're planning. The coordinates in the scroll, Wong reminded him. They could lead us to their next experiment. Or into a trap, Clea cautioned. Either way, it's our best lead, Naruto decided. But we'll need help. He turned to Ileana. Can you contact the X-Men? We may need mutant abilities that can counteract specific aspects of their plan. She nodded once. We'll bring message to Professor Xavier immediately. Shuri, your sensors might be our best tool for tracking the energy fluctuations as they develop. Can Wakanda provide global monitoring? The young princess grinned. Already done. My brother authorized deployment of satellite-based detection systems after our initial discoveries. We can track chakra-dimensional anomalies worldwide in real time. Clea, we'll need your knowledge of interdimensional barriers, especially regarding the dark dimension connection they seem to be exploiting. Of course, she agreed. I can also attempt to secure the dark dimension's boundaries from that side, limiting their ability to draw power from my uncle's realm. Naruto turned finally to Wong. And we'll need every scrap of information Kamartaj possesses about dimensional summoning rituals. Particularly those designed to bring specific entities across realities. The librarian bowed slightly. I'll begin the research immediately. As the others moved to their tasks, Naruto found himself momentarily alone with his thoughts. The complexity of the threat they faced was becoming clearer, but so were the strengths of his allies. Whatever Misumi and Orochimaru were planning, they hadn't anticipated the diverse coalition forming against them. A soft chime from his pocket dimension interrupted his contemplation. Reaching into the metaphysical space, he retrieved a communication device Stark had designed specifically for him, one that could function despite the interference his chakra typically caused in electronic equipment. Natasha's face appeared on the small holographic display. Her expression, usually carefully controlled, showed visible concern. We have a situation, she said without preamble. Hydra facility identified in northern Siberia, matching the laboratory you saw through the portal. But there's more. They've taken hostages, including several enhanced individuals with dimensional manipulation abilities. Naruto's grip tightened on the device. How many? At least 6 confirmed. Including one who'll interest you particularly. She hesitated, uncharacteristic for the usually direct spy. They have Stephen Strange. The Hydra facility squatted like a malignant growth amid the Siberian wilderness, its brutalist concrete architecture partially buried beneath snow and ice. To the untrained eye, it might have appeared abandoned, another relic of Cold War-era research stations left to decay. But Naruto's enhanced senses detected the hum of advanced technology and the distinctive energy signatures of mystical containment fields radiating from deep within the structure. He crouched atop a ridge overlooking the compound, his white and orange winter combat gear blending with the snowy landscape. Beside him, Natasha Romanoff surveyed the facility through specialized binoculars, her breath forming small clouds in the frigid air. 3 patrol rotations, 5 minutes apart, she reported clinically. Automated defense systems concentrated on the east and south approaches. Underground power source, likely self-contained, given the isolation. And the mystical defenses? Naruto asked, extending his awareness toward the complex. According to surveillance, they've implemented some kind of chakra disruption field around the main research wing. Similar to what they used during the Kazakhstan incident last year, but significantly advanced. She lowered the binoculars, turning to face him directly. You won't be able to use standard transportation techniques inside. No shadow clones, no teleportation. Naruto nodded, unsurprised. They've been studying me for longer than we realized. Adapting their countermeasures specifically. It's what Hydra does, Natasha replied, her voice carrying the weight of personal experience. Identify threats, analyze weaknesses, develop targeted responses. They've had years to prepare for confronting you directly. The wind picked up, driving ice crystals against their position with increasing intensity. Naruto noted how Natasha adjusted her position slightly to minimize exposure while maintaining optimal sightlines to the facility, one of countless small adaptations that spoke to her extensive training and experience. The extraction team is in position, she continued, touching the specialized communicator in her ear. Waiting for your signal. Unlike their previous missions together, this operation involved a carefully selected coalition rather than traditional Avengers. The politically complex nature of a raid on sovereign Russian territory required deniability that the more public heroes couldn't provide. Ilyana's status? Naruto asked, knowing the young mutant sorceress was key to their extraction plan. In position with Wanda at the secondary location. Once you disable the dimensional dampening field, they'll open a direct evacuation route for the hostages. Naruto took a moment to center himself, reviewing the plan once more. The satellite data Shuri had provided confirmed this facility as a major node in the emerging dimensional network. Whatever experiments they were conducting here involved the captive dimensional manipulators, using their unique energies to stabilize connection points between realities. The presence of Stephen Strange was particularly concerning. Though he had ultimately not become Sorcerer Supreme in this timeline, Strange remained one of Earth's most talented mystics. His capture suggested Hydra's operation had reached a critical phase requiring specialized mystical knowledge. Something's bothering you, Natasha observed, her perceptive gaze catching the subtle tension in his posture. Beyond the obvious. Naruto smiled faintly. Few people could read him so accurately, especially when he made efforts to conceal his concerns. Natasha's ability to perceive what others missed was just one of the qualities that had drawn him to her over years of working together. This facility, he admitted quietly. The design, the security protocols, the specific countermeasures against my abilities, they're too precise. Someone with intimate knowledge of both Hydra and myself helped design this. You're thinking of the Ancient One, Natasha stated rather than asked. That she might have shared information about you with them. Or been compromised in some way, he agreed. Masumi claimed she and Orochimaru had communicated with the Ancient One before my arrival in this dimension. Natasha considered this, her analytical mind working through the possibilities. The Ancient One kept many secrets, she acknowledged. But everything I've learned about her suggests she was playing a longer game than any of us could comprehend. That's what worries me, Naruto confessed. What if bringing me here wasn't about protecting Earth, but part of some larger design we still don't understand? For a moment, the only sound was the howling Siberian wind. Then Natasha did something unexpected, she reached out and placed her hand over his, the touch firm and grounding even through their insulated gloves. Listen to me, she said, her green eyes holding his with unusual intensity. I've spent my life unraveling conspiracies and hidden agendas. Reading people is what I was trained to do from childhood. And in all our years working together, I've never once doubted that your presence here has been for the better. The simple sincerity of her words struck deeper than any elaborate reassurance could have. Natasha Romanoff did not offer blind comfort or false confidence. Her assessment came from the same clear-eyed pragmatism that had kept her alive through decades as a Spy and avenger. Besides, she added with the ghost of a smile, if you were part of some cosmic manipulation, you'd be terrible at hiding it. You're still the worst liar I've ever met. Naruto chuckled despite himself. I've gotten better. Marginally, she conceded, her hand lingering on his for a moment longer before returning to her binoculars. And only because I've been giving you pointers. The brief exchange lightened something in Naruto's chest, clearing his mind for the task ahead. Whatever larger conspiracies might exist, the immediate mission was clear: rescue the captives and disrupt Hydra's dimensional experiments. It's time, he said, rising smoothly into a crouch. Remember, our primary objective is extraction. Intelligence gathering is secondary. Natasha nodded, checking her specialized widow's bite gauntlets and the various weapons concealed throughout her tactical suit. 30 minutes until the storm front hits. That's our window for a clean extraction. Then let's not waste it. Naruto formed a series of hand seals, channeling chakra in a pattern he'd developed specifically for operations in extreme environments. Wind style, silent approach technique. The howling wind around them suddenly curved, creating a protective envelope that would carry their scent and sound away from the facility's sensors. Together they began their descent toward the compound, moving with the practiced coordination of partners who had faced countless dangers side by side. As they approached the outer perimeter, Naruto sensed the first layers of the chakra disruption field, a subtle pressure against his spiritual energy, like trying to breathe underwater. Beyond it, his usual techniques would be significantly hampered, forcing him to rely on more conventional approaches and the limited mystic arts that didn't require chakra manipulation. They paused at the edge of sensor range, concealed behind a snowdrift. Natasha withdrew a small device from her belt, Shuri's technology, designed to create a momentary blind spot in the electronic surveillance system. On my mark, she whispered, eyes on the chronometer built into her gauntlet. 3, 2, 1. She activated the device. A nearly imperceptible pulse rippled across the facility's outer defenses. In the momentary gap, they sprinted across the exposed ground to the ventilation intake Natasha's intelligence had identified as their entry point. The metal grate yielded silently to Naruto's enhanced strength. They slipped inside just as the security systems reset, the timing executed with perfect precision. The ventilation shaft was narrow but navigable, its interior warmer than the bitter cold outside. They moved silently, Natasha leading with a holographic map projected from her gauntlet showing heat signatures and patrol patterns throughout the facility. Hostage containment, sublevel 3, she murmured, indicating a cluster of signatures on the display. Heavy guard presence end. She frowned, adjusting the scanner's settings, some kind of energy barrier around the entire section. The dampening field's epicenter, Naruto confirmed, feeling the increasing pressure against his chakra network as they descended deeper into the facility. They've created a localized dimensional bubble, similar to Wong's containment spells but inverted. Designed to keep energy in rather than out. They reached a junction where the shaft widened into a maintenance access point. Below them, two guards in Hydra's distinctive tactical gear patrolled a sterile white corridor. Natasha caught Naruto's eye, a silent question in her gaze. He nodded once. She dropped through the opening with liquid grace, landing behind the first guard without a sound. Before he could react, her gauntlets discharged a precise electrical pulse against his neck, dropping him unconsciously to the floor. Simultaneously, Naruto descended on the second guard, a swift strike to a pressure point rendering him similarly incapacitated. They dragged both bodies into a nearby storage closet, securing them with specialized restraints. 11 minutes, Natasha noted, checking her chronometer. Still on schedule. The corridor branched ahead, leading deeper into the complex. As they advanced, the architectural style shifted noticeably, transitioning from utilitarian military design to something that made Naruto's skin crawl with recognition. The walls began displaying sealing formulas reminiscent of Orochimaru's hidden laboratories, though modified with elements he didn't recognize. These containment seals, he whispered, examining one inscribed above a reinforced door. They're hybridized, chakra-based structures infused with this dimension's mystical principles. Masumi's work? Natasha asked, photographing the seals with her gauntlet's built-in scanner. Almost certainly. The base elements match Orochimaru's style, but the integration with local energies shows deep understanding of both systems. They continued deeper, encountering surprisingly little resistance. The facility seemed to be operating with minimal personnel, either confidence in their automated defenses or an indication that whatever experiment they were conducting required limited witnesses. As they reached the entrance to Sublevel 3, the pressure against Naruto's chakra network intensified dramatically. Moving felt like wading through invisible syrup, his spiritual energy compressed and constrained by the surrounding field. "This is going to complicate things," he murmured, examining the massive reinforced doors blocking their path. Unlike conventional security, these bore elaborate sealing arrays that pulsed with malevolent energy. Breaking through directly would alert everyone inside. Natasha studied the control panel beside the doors, her expression revealing nothing of her thoughts. "Standard Hydra encryption, but connected to a secondary system I don't recognize." "It's chakra-locked," Naruto explained, recognizing the modified seal array. "Requires specific energy signatures to unlock, likely keyed to Masumi herself." "Can you bypass it?" He considered the problem, analyzing the seal's structure. "Not directly. But maybe." He reached into his equipment pouch and removed a small vial containing what appeared to be ordinary water. "This might work." "What is it?" Natasha asked, keeping watch on the corridor behind them. "Sage oil infused with natural energy from my meditation at Mount Mayaboku before coming to this dimension. The Ancient One helped me preserve it." He carefully applied a drop to the center of the sealing array. "If the lock is keyed to chakra signatures from my world, this might register as compatible." For a tense moment, nothing happened. Then the seals began to glow faintly, shifting from angry red to a more neutral blue. The massive doors shuddered, then slowly began to part. "Impressive," Natasha commented. "Though I'm noting that for future security recommendations." "Please don't," Naruto groaned. "Tony's containment protocols are already excessive." As the doors opened fully, they were greeted not by guards or alarms, but by an expansive laboratory space that stopped Naruto in his tracks. The chamber extended several stories high, its circular design centered around a massive apparatus that immediately triggered recognition, a modified version of the dimensional viewer he'd glimpsed through the portal in Central Park. But what truly seized his attention were the containment cells arranged around the perimeter. 6 transparent chambers, each holding a captive suspended in some kind of stasis field. He recognized several immediately: Stephen Strange, his distinctive features unmistakable despite the absence of his cloak; America Chavez, the young interdimensional traveler the Avengers had encountered last year, and others with known dimensional manipulation abilities. 9 minutes, Natasha whispered, already moving toward the control console. "Security systems indicate automated patrol in 7. We need to move fast." Naruto approached the nearest containment field, which held Strange. The former neurosurgeon appeared unconscious, mystical restraints binding his hands in specific positions to prevent spellcasting gestures. Tubes and sensors connected to his body, apparently drawing or measuring energy. "They're using them as batteries," he realized with growing horror. "Channeling their unique dimensional energies into the central apparatus." "Can you disable it?" Natasha asked, already working on bypassing the security protocols controlling the containment fields. "I think so, but," he stopped abruptly, senses alerting him to another presence. "We're not alone." From the shadows at the far end of the laboratory stepped a familiar figure, Masumi, her pale features calm and composed despite their intrusion. She wore a modified Hydra uniform with elements reminiscent of Orochimaru's preferred attire, the cursed seal visible at her neck now partially extended across her face in a pattern of dark markings. "Sorcerer Supreme," she greeted with mock formality. "Right on schedule. I was beginning to worry you wouldn't accept my invitation." Naruto shifted into a defensive stance, noting with frustration how the dampening field continued to suppress his chakra network. This was a trap. Of course it was, she replied with the same casual arrogance he'd often heard in Orochimaru's voice. Though, opportunity might be a more accurate term. I need something only you can provide voluntarily. Natasha had positioned herself strategically, sightlines clear to both exits while maintaining proximity to the control console. The hostages are real enough, she observed coldly. As is whatever you're doing to them. Merely borrowing their unique energies, Masumi explained, stepping closer to the central apparatus. Each possesses a specific connection to the dimensional fabric that, when properly harvested, creates a harmonic resonance pattern. You're using them to stabilize the connection points, Naruto surmised, eyes narrowing. Creating anchors for your planetary summoning array. Masumi's expression revealed genuine surprise for the first time. You figured it out sooner than expected. Father will be pleased, he always said your strategic insight was underestimated by others. Let them go, Naruto demanded, gesturing to the captives. Whatever you're planning, they're not necessary now that I'm here. A cold smile curved her lips. On the contrary. They're vital to maintaining the network until the final phase is ready. Which, conveniently, requires your participation. She approached a control panel and activated a sequence that caused the central apparatus to hum with increasing energy. The air above it shimmered, gradually resolving into what appeared to be a viewing portal, similar to the one Naruto had seen in Central Park, but more stable, more defined. Through it, a laboratory on the other side became visible. And standing within it, unmistakable despite the years that had passed, was Orochimaru himself. The snake Sannin looked essentially unchanged, pale skin, long dark hair, and the same calculating golden eyes that had haunted many of Naruto's youthful nightmares. He wore simple research attire rather than battle gear, suggesting his focus had indeed shifted to scientific pursuits as rumors had claimed before Naruto left their world. Naruto-kun, Orochimaru greeted, his silky voice distorted slightly by the dimensional barrier between them. How fascinating to see what you've become in this new world. The Ancient One chose her successor well. What do you want, Orochimaru? Naruto demanded, acutely aware of Natasha silently working to free the captives while attention remained focused on him. Such directness, the Sannin chided with feigned disappointment. No curiosity about how your friends fare. About how Konoha has changed in your absence. About whether Sasuke finally achieved the peace you always wished for him. The mention of his former teammates sent an unexpected pang through Naruto's chest. 6 years had dulled but never eliminated the ache of separation from his home world. My daughter has already explained our primary goal, Orochimaru continued when Naruto remained silent. A stable connection between our dimensions would benefit both worlds immeasurably. Your unique position as a native of our world who has mastered this dimension's mystical arts makes you the perfect bridge. Perfect sacrifice, you mean, Naruto countered. A permanent connection would destroy the dimensional boundaries, causing collapse on both sides. Orochimaru's smile widened. Initially, perhaps. Some localized instabilities would occur. But equilibrium would eventually establish itself, particularly with proper guidance from those who understand both systems. Even if that were true, which I doubt, the cost would be measured in millions of lives, Naruto argued. I won't help you. Won't you? The Sannin's golden eyes gleamed with knowing confidence. Not even to save them. The portal's view shifted, revealing a second laboratory chamber behind Orochimaru. Within it stood several familiar figures under guard, Sakura Haruno, her pink hair unmistakable despite the years, Kakashi Hatake, his distinctive mask and silver hair unchanged, and most surprisingly, Hinata Hyuga, her pale eyes widening with visible shock as she apparently caught sight of Naruto through the dimensional viewer. Naruto, her voice called faintly across the dimensions, the sound distorted but unmistakable. Cold fury washed through him. You're using them as hostages. Insurance, Orochimaru corrected smoothly. Motivation for your cooperation. The process requires your voluntary participation, your chakra freely given while wielding the time stone. The resulting resonance will stabilize the connection permanently. Naruto's mind raced, analyzing possibilities, seeking alternatives. The dampening field prevented most of his techniques, but not his connection to the time stone, which operated on different principles. If he could find a way to disrupt the central apparatus while appearing to cooperate. "You have 2 minutes to decide," Masumi stated, checking a monitoring device on her wrist. "After that, the portal will destabilize, and will be forced to try again, with less gentle persuasion for your friends." Natasha caught his eye briefly from her position near the containment fields, a subtle signal indicating she had made progress bypassing the security systems. They needed more time. "Show me they're real," Naruto demanded, stalling. "Not illusions or genjutsu." Orochimaru chuckled. "Still suspicious after all these years. Very well." He approached the captives on his side of the portal. "Ask them something only they would know. Something not in any report or record I could have accessed." Naruto hesitated, then addressed Kakashi directly. "What did you say to me after our first bell test when I was tied to the training post?" Kakashi's visible eye crinkled with recognition. "I told you that those who abandon their friends are worse than scum," he replied, his voice carrying the same casual confidence Naruto remembered despite the dimensional distortion. The answer was correct, but something felt off about the interaction, a subtle wrongness he couldn't immediately identify. "Satisfied?" Orochimaru asked, clearly growing impatient. "The portal stability is degrading. We have perhaps 1 minute before connection is lost." "If I agree to help," Naruto said carefully, "you'll release all hostages, both here and in your world." "Of course," Masumi interjected. "Once the connection is stabilized, they'll be unnecessary. Their unique energies will no longer be required to maintain the network." Behind her, Naruto noticed Natasha had successfully disabled the security protocols on 2 of the containment fields. She needed only a few more moments. "Very well," he said, stepping toward the central apparatus. "I'll cooperate." Masumi's expression revealed momentary surprise before settling into satisfaction. A wise decision. The process is simple. Channel your chakra through the time stone while focusing on the dimensional coordinates provided in the scroll I gave you. As Naruto approached the apparatus, he reached up to the time stone embedded in his headband. The ancient relic pulsed in response to his touch, its green energy intermingling with his blue chakra in visible patterns. Quickly, Orochimaru urged from the other side of the portal. "The connection is failing." Naruto placed his hands on the designated contact points of the apparatus, feeling its energy system attempting to synchronize with his own. The time stone brightened as he channeled power into it, creating the appearance of cooperation while subtly altering the flow patterns. Years of studying the stone's properties under the Ancient One's guidance had taught him techniques unknown to most mystics. While the dampening field suppressed his chakra-based abilities, the time stone operated on fundamental cosmic principles beyond such constraints. Green temporal energy began spiraling around him, creating a display impressive enough to hold Masumi's attention while Natasha completed her work on the containment fields. Through their subtle coordination developed over years of joint missions, he knew exactly how much time she needed. "Something's wrong," Masumi suddenly declared, examining readings on a nearby monitor. "The resonance pattern is incorrect. You're channeling the stone's energy improperly." "Am I?" Naruto replied, his concentration never wavering. "Or perhaps your calculations fail to account for how the stone interacts with chakra in this dimension." On the other side of the portal, Orochimaru's eyes narrowed with suspicion. "He's stalling, Masumi. The pattern shows deliberate interference." The moment had come. Naruto locked eyes with Natasha across the laboratory, giving an imperceptible nod. She immediately triggered the release mechanism she'd prepared, causing all 6 containment fields to deactivate simultaneously. As the captives began to fall from their suspended positions, Naruto channeled a massive surge of energy into the time stone, focusing not on the dimensional coordinates Masumi had provided but on a specific temporal manipulation technique. Chronostasis field, expand, he commanded. Green energy exploded outward from the time stone, enveloping the entire laboratory in a temporal bubble that slowed time to a near standstill for everyone except Naruto and those he deliberately excluded from the effect. Masumi, caught mid-motion reaching for a weapon, froze in place, her expression locked in dawning realization of his deception. With the temporal field established, Naruto moved quickly to the freed captives, supporting Strange's unconscious form as Natasha helped America Chavez. The dampening field is still active, he told Natasha as they gathered the disoriented prisoners. We need to disable it before extraction. There, Natasha indicated a secondary control system across the laboratory. Power junction for the entire containment section. One good overload should disrupt it temporarily. Naruto nodded, carefully passing Strange to one of the other recovered captives who had regained consciousness. The chronostasis field won't hold for more than another minute, the stone's energy is being drained too quickly by the apparatus. They moved swiftly to the power junction, Natasha's expert hands quickly bypassing safety protocols to access the core systems. Ready for overload. On your mark. Naruto glanced back at the frozen tableau, Masumi caught in her moment of realization, Orochimaru's suspicious gaze locked through the dimensional portal, the hostages from his world still visible on the other side. Something about that last image continued to nag at him, but there was no time to analyze it further. Now, he instructed. Natasha triggered the overload. Electricity surged through the system, creating cascading failures throughout the laboratory's specialized equipment. The lights flickered, then died, emergency illumination casting the room in an eerie red glow. Immediately Naruto felt the dampening field collapse, chakra flowing freely through his network once more. The chronostasis field collapsed simultaneously, time resuming its normal flow for everyone in the chamber. Masumi staggered forward, momentarily disoriented by the subjective time skip she'd experienced. No, she shouted, seeing the freed captives. You've ruined everything. That was the plan, Naruto replied, hands already forming familiar seals. Shadow clone jutsu. A dozen perfect duplicates materialized around the laboratory, moving to secure the captives and create a defensive perimeter. The real Naruto approached the central apparatus, which continued functioning despite the power disruption, evidence of independent energy systems. Through the still active portal, Orochimaru watched with calculated interest rather than anger. Impressive adaptation, he commented, as though observing an experiment rather than experiencing a setback. The time stone's manipulation exceeds my projections. This ends now, Naruto declared, preparing to destroy the apparatus. Does it? Orochimaru asked mildly. Look again at what you're leaving behind, Naruto-kun. Despite himself, Naruto glanced at the captives visible through the portal. In that instant, with the dampening field disabled and his full sensory abilities restored, he finally recognized what had been bothering him. The chakra signatures were wrong. Subtle genjutsu overlaid on ordinary people, not his friends at all, but convincing facsimiles designed to manipulate him emotionally. The realization brought both relief and renewed anger. They're fakes, he told Natasha, who had positioned herself to cover their retreat. Genjutsu disguises. Of course they are, Orochimaru acknowledged with a dismissive wave. Did you truly believe I would risk actual valuable assets in such a speculative venture? Though your emotional response provided useful data on your continued attachment to your former life. Before Naruto could respond, the facility's alert system activated, piercing alarms and strobing lights indicating a security breach far larger than their infiltration. Your extraction team has arrived ahead of schedule, Masumi noted, apparently unconcerned despite her plans unraveling. How fortunate for you. This is merely a setback, Orochimaru added, his image beginning to waver as the portal's stability decreased. The network remains largely intact, and we've gathered critical data on the time stone's interaction with chakra. Naruto formed a Rasengan in his palm, the swirling blue energy growing larger and more intense than would have been possible under the dampening field. Your network won't survive what I'm about to do to this facility. Orochimaru's fading image smiled that unsettling, knowing smile that had always made Naruto's skin crawl. Perhaps. But ask yourself this, Naruto-kun, in destroying our work, are you protecting this world, or simply choosing it over your own? The portal collapsed before Naruto could answer, leaving him staring at the space where it had been, the Rasengan still spinning in his palm. Naruto, Natasha called sharply, breaking through his momentary distraction. We need to move. Facility defenses activating. He turned to find her already organizing the freed captives into a defensible group, her tactical mind instantly adapting to the changing situation. Strange had regained consciousness, though he appeared weakened, his hands still partially restrained by specialized manacles. Extraction point? Naruto asked, dispelling the Rasengan and moving to join them. Southeast Service Corridor, Natasha replied, supporting America Chavez who seemed the most disoriented of the rescued prisoners. Ileana and Wanda should have cleared a path by now. Masumi made no move to stop them, watching with clinical detachment as Naruto's shadow clones formed a protective formation around the group. We'll meet again, Uzumaki, she stated calmly. Sooner than you think. Count on it, he replied grimly. And next time, I won't be so easily manipulated. They retreated swiftly through the facility's winding corridors, encountering sporadic resistance from Hydra personnel that was quickly neutralized by Naruto's clones. The further they moved from the central laboratory, the more Naruto sensed additional chakra signatures throughout the complex, evidence that Masumi's operation extended far beyond the single experiment they had disrupted. They reached the designated extraction point to find a scene of controlled chaos. A massive stepping disc dominated the service corridor, Ileana Rasputina standing at its center, maintaining the portal with visible effort. Beside her, Wanda Maximoff channeled Scarlet energy to hold back Hydra reinforcements attempting to breach their position from an adjoining hallway. About time, Ileana called out, her Russian accent thickening with strain. Portal unstable. Hurry. They moved quickly, helping the weakened captives onto the glowing disc. Strange approached Naruto as they prepared for extraction, his usually composed demeanor replaced with genuine concern. They were using us to create fixed points in the dimensional framework, he explained urgently. Anchors for something larger. But they didn't need information from me, they already had extensive knowledge of mystical principles, specifically related to the Eye of Agamotto. The Time Stone, Naruto nodded. Orochimaru somehow has information about it that he shouldn't possess. Not just information, Strange insisted. Practical understanding. They were replicating specific temporal manipulation techniques I've only seen in Kamartaj's most restricted texts. Before they could continue the conversation, a massive explosion rocked the facility. The structure shuddered around them, concrete dust raining from the ceiling. Self-destruct sequence, Natasha reported grimly, checking readings on her gauntlet. 2 minutes until complete facility collapse. Everyone on the disc, now. Naruto ordered, creating additional shadow clones to help the remaining captives. Wanda maintained her defensive barrier as they completed the evacuation, her power visibly straining against increasing pressure from the Hydra forces. Something's wrong, she called out, crimson energy flickering around her hands. They're using some kind of energy dampening technology aimed specifically at my abilities. Naruto moved to her side, instantly recognizing the distinctive chakra signature in the weapons being deployed against them. Modified sound-based attacks, he confirmed. Similar to techniques from my world, designed to disrupt energy patterns. Can't hold much longer, she grimaced, sweat beading on her forehead as the barrier began to fracture under sustained assault. You don't have to, Naruto assured her. Everyone's on the disc. Except for them. And Natasha, who had positioned herself at the junction where another corridor met theirs, providing covering fire against a secondary Hydra team attempting to flank their position. Natasha, he called. Time to go. She fired a final explosive round down the corridor before sprinting toward them. Facility coming down in 60 seconds. As they converged on the stepping disc, a final Hydra assault team breached Wanda's weakening barrier. Armored operatives poured into the corridor, weapons firing specialized energy pulses designed to disrupt mystical abilities. Naruto reacted instinctively, placing himself between the attackers and his companions. Ninetales Chakra Mode. Golden energy erupted around him as he accessed the Fox's power directly, the sudden surge overwhelming the specialized Hydra weaponry. The chakra formed a protective cloak, extending outward to envelop Wanda, Natasha, and Ileana as they completed their movement onto the stepping disc. "Now, Ileana," he commanded. The young mutant sorceress channeled her power, the stepping disc flaring with brilliant light as it transported them away from the collapsing facility. The last thing Naruto saw before the teleportation completed was Masumi watching from a distant doorway, her expression not of defeat, but of calculated assessment, as though their escape had somehow been anticipated in her plans. The disc deposited them in a clearing several miles from the facility, where a Quinjet waited with additional extraction team members. As the teleportation light faded, Naruto maintained the Ninetales chakra cloak for several seconds longer, ensuring everyone had arrived safely before releasing the technique. In the distance, a massive explosion illuminated the night sky as the Hydra base self-destructed, sending a plume of fire and smoke into the air above the Siberian wilderness. "Everyone accounted for?" Natasha asked, immediately shifting to mission coordinator as medical personnel rushed to attend to the freed captives. "All present," confirmed Maria Hill from the Quinjet's ramp. "Though Strange and the others will need immediate medical attention. The extraction effects they were subjected to caused significant cellular damage." Naruto nodded, already moving to assist. As he passed Ileana, he noticed her leaning heavily against the Quinjet's hull, exhaustion evident in her posture. "You pushed yourself too hard," he observed, noting the visible strain around her eyes. "Had no choice," she replied with characteristic bluntness. "Dimensional pathways becoming unstable everywhere. Took 3 attempts to establish correct portal location. We'll need to analyze exactly what they were doing to the captives," he said. "If they were using them as dimensional anchors, the effects might linger even after rescue." Ileana nodded grimly. "Already feeling it. Something changed when I teleported them. Connection to Limbo, blurred somehow." Her admission concerned him deeply. As ruler of Limbo, Ileana's connection to that dimension was fundamental to her being. Any disruption could have profound consequences for her personally and for the stability of Limbo itself. "We'll figure it out," he promised. "Once we're back at the sanctum, Clea and Wong can help assess the damage." As the medical team worked to stabilize the rescued captives, Wanda approached, her expression troubled. "I felt something when we teleported," she said quietly. "A presence. Watching us through the dimensional pathways." Naruto had sensed it too, a familiar malevolent awareness observing their escape with clinical interest. "Orochimaru," he confirmed. "Even with the portal collapsed, he's found ways to maintain surveillance across dimensions." "Which means their network is still active," Natasha concluded, joining their conversation. "Despite destroying that facility. They sacrificed a single node to gain valuable data," Naruto agreed. "Classic Orochimaru strategy, risking pawns to observe how the opponent responds under pressure." The implications were deeply concerning. If Orochimaru and Masumi could observe their movements across dimensional boundaries, nowhere was truly secure. The very techniques they relied upon for transportation and communication might be compromised. As the Quinjet prepared for departure, Naruto took a moment to gaze at the distant plume of smoke rising from the destroyed facility. They had won this skirmish, rescued valuable allies, and disrupted one component of the enemy's plan. Yet he couldn't shake the feeling that they were being maneuvered according to some larger design, chess pieces advancing exactly as their opponent intended. "You're troubled," Wanda observed softly, moving to stand beside him. "Orochimaru's parting question," he admitted. "About whether I'm protecting this world or choosing it over my own." Her eyes, bright with intelligence and power, studied him carefully. And does that question disturb you because you fear the answer, or because you already know it? The insight caught him off guard, a reminder of how perceptive Wanda could be, despite her sometimes chaotic nature. Before he could respond, Natasha called from the Quinjet's ramp. "Wheels up in 2 minutes. Strange is asking for you, Naruto. Says it's urgent." With a final glance at the horizon, Naruto turned away from the smoking ruins and rejoined his allies. Whatever game Orochimaru was playing, whatever plans Masumi had set in motion, they would face them together. But the question lingered, unanswered, in the back of his mind. The New York Sanctum's library had been expanded considerably during Naruto's tenure, incorporating scrolls and texts from his home dimension alongside the traditional mystical tomes collected by previous Sorcerers Supreme. The result was a unique repository of knowledge bridging multiple magical traditions and dimensional theories. It was here that they gathered 24 hours after the Siberia extraction, a council of allies representing diverse approaches to the growing crisis. The rescued captives had been stabilized and moved to secure locations, with Strange insisting on joining their strategic meeting despite his weakened condition. "The network remains active," Shuri reported, manipulating a holographic globe that displayed pulsing points of energy across the Earth's surface. "We've confirmed 37 major nodes and over 200 minor connection points." Destroying the Siberian facility caused only temporary disruption before the system redistributed its energy flow. Like a biological organism adapting to injury, Strange observed from his position in a comfortable armchair, a cup of tea cradled in still trembling hands. "The network possesses emergent intelligence, it learns and evolves." "Exactly," Shuri agreed, expanding the display to show energy flow patterns between nodes. "Each disruption we cause teaches it to create redundancies and alternative pathways." Naruto studied the complex web of connections with growing concern. The pattern had evolved since they'd first identified it, becoming more organic in its structure, less predictable in its energy distribution. "What's the current assessment of dimensional stability?" he asked, directing the question to both Shuri and Clea, who had been working together on monitoring efforts. Clea stepped forward, her ethereal movements drawing all eyes as she adjusted the holographic display with graceful gestures. "The boundaries between dimensions remain intact, but increasingly permeable. We've detected 17 spontaneous micro-incursions in the past 24 hours, brief moments where objects or energy from other realities manifested briefly before returning. Similar phenomena occurring in limbo," Ileana added from where she leaned against a bookshelf, arms crossed. "Territories shifting, overlapping with other dimensions temporarily." Wong, who had been silently reviewing ancient texts at a nearby table, closed his current volume with a decisive thump. "I've completed analysis of the scroll Masumi provided. The summoning formula is genuine but incomplete, deliberately so." A piece of a larger puzzle, Natasha surmised from her position near the window, where she maintained watch on the street below out of habitual caution. "Precisely," Wong confirmed. "The scroll contains 1/7 of a complete dimensional summoning ritual. Ancient in origin, but modified with contemporary elements from both our world and yours, Naruto." 1/7, Strange repeated, his keen mind immediately grasping the significance despite his weakened state. The classical number of components for a complete soul transfer across dimensional boundaries. Naruto felt a chill run through him as the pieces clicked into place. They're not just creating a stable connection between dimensions. They're preparing for Orochimaru to physically cross over, not just his consciousness, but his entire being. Transferring between bodies was always his specialty, he continued, pacing the library floor as he connected threads of understanding. But moving between dimensions would require anchoring points specifically attuned to his chakra signature. The captives, Wanda realized. They weren't just powering the network, they were being prepared as potential vessels. "Our medical analysis confirms it," Shuri said, pulling up detailed scans of the rescued hostages. "Their cellular structure shows evidence of modification, subtle changes to their energy channels that would make them more compatible hosts for an external consciousness." The implications were horrifying. Orochimaru's body transfer technique had been forbidden in their world for good reason. It essentially erased the host's consciousness, replacing it with the transferer's mind and soul while maintaining the physical abilities and unique powers of the vessel. If he successfully transfers into someone with dimensional manipulation abilities, Naruto thought aloud, he could potentially stabilize the connection from this side permanently. Strange would have been the ideal candidate, Clea observed, her violet eyes shifting to the weakened sorcerer. His mastery of the mystical arts combined with experience handling the time stone would create a vessel of unprecedented potential. Strange nodded grimly. They were particularly interested in my experiences with the stone. The interrogation focused almost exclusively on temporal manipulation techniques. Which aligns with what we observed in the Hydra facility, Natasha added. The central apparatus was designed to harness the time stone's energy specifically. But why? Shuri questioned, adjusting her holographic display to focus on the temporal elements they'd observed. What function does time manipulation serve in creating dimensional bridges? Synchronization, Wong answered before Naruto could. Different dimensions exist in different temporal flows. To create a stable connection, those flows must be harmonized. The time stone could force both dimensions into temporal alignment, Naruto agreed, understanding dawning. Creating a momentary window where transfer between them becomes possible. The room fell silent as each considered the implications. If Orochimaru succeeded in crossing over, combining his chakra-based techniques with this world's mystical energies, the threat would be unlike anything they had faced before. We need to locate the remaining components of the summoning ritual, Naruto decided, turning to address the group directly. Wong, continue analyzing the scroll for any clues to where the other 6 pieces might be hidden. The librarian nodded solemnly. I've already identified references to specific alignments that may indicate their locations. With Shuri's scanning technology, we could potentially narrow the search. I'll coordinate with Wakandan intelligence, Shuri agreed. If these artifacts exist physically in our world, we'll find them. Clea, Naruto continued, your connection to the dark dimension may be crucial. If they're drawing power from your uncle's realm, even indirectly, we need to understand how and why. I'll return there immediately, she confirmed. Though extended absence from Earth may be unwise given the current instabilities. Agreed. Take whatever resources you need, but maintain regular contact. He turned next to Ileana. Your stepping discs provide our most reliable transportation since the dimensional pathways are being monitored. Can you maintain your connection to Limbo despite the disruptions? The young mutant sorceress straightened, determination flashing in her eyes. Duh. Is not comfortable, but is possible. We'll coordinate with X-Men to establish secure transport network. Good. We'll need it when we locate the ritual components. Finally, he addressed Wanda and Natasha. I need you both with me. We're going to investigate the primary node in New York directly, the one beneath Central Park where we first encountered Masumi. You believe she'll return there? Wanda asked, scarlet energy flickering briefly around her fingers in anticipation. Not personally, Naruto replied. But it's where the dimensional barriers first showed significant weakening. There may be clues about their overall plan we missed previously. As the meeting concluded and the group dispersed to their assigned tasks, Strange gestured for Naruto to remain behind. Once they were alone in the library, the former surgeon fixed him with an intense gaze. There's something I didn't share with the others, he said quietly. Something I glimpsed while they were extracting dimensional energy from me. Naruto sat beside him, concern evident in his expression. What did you see? Not our past or future, Strange clarified. But yours. Fragments of the timeline you left behind when you came to this dimension. A mixture of hope and apprehension flashed across Naruto's features. My friends? Konoha. Strange nodded slowly. They continued without you. Adapted. Sasuke returned permanently to the village, taking on many of the responsibilities you might have shouldered. Sakura became head of the medical corps. Kakashi served as Hokage for several years before Konohamaru succeeded him. Each name, each detail, struck Naruto with bittersweet impact, joy at their accomplishments mingled with the pain of having missed witnessing them firsthand. They mourned you, Strange continued gently. But they honored your memory by building the piece you the end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.